right. Today is another episode of Books Galore and CreatorCore. We have with us author Ellie Larum and later on Dr. Michael Copeland. And today, author Ellie Larum is going to basically tell us about an upcoming project that she has open, as well as reading from one of her current books. So please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kay. I'm so glad to be here again. I always really enjoy these. So I am Ellie Liram. I write clean Christian fantasy. So all of my books are very allegorical, like Chronicles of Narnia, where you have your figure representing God, just like Aslan is representing God in Narnia. So that's kind of what I write. I have two books currently on the market that focus more on faith and redemption. It has a little bit of some darker topic in there, like persecution, because that is something going on currently in the world today. But my upcoming book actually takes and turns that completely on the pendulum. I have the Cassie series coming out on October 21st. It is a gritty Christian fantasy. Now, when I say gritty, it is a choice of word rather than dark. When people think of dark fantasy, they think of things like A Court of Thorns and Roses or Foxglove King, in which there's a lot of really mature content, including mature scenes that an adult audience may enjoy. While my books do talk on some mature topics such as grief, loss, trauma, pregnancy, abuse, etc., I do not ever write these scenes for shock value, nor do I write sexually explicit scenes. So the gritty fantasy in that is bringing light to the shadows in which those darkness and those hard topics tend to hide in, so that we can start to expose them to the light and help people realize that they are not alone in those trials if they are experiencing them. And if they are experiencing them, there is some hope at the end of the tunnel. There are resources that they have available to them so that they can get the help they need.
Okay. So it's mainly sort of themes that are supposed to be relatable.
Things that are supposed to be relatable that society doesn't like talking about. A big one for me, so a little bit of my story. When I was first married, I experienced a miscarriage. It was a really rough time for my husband and I. Our first baby we lost. And at that time, there was no other woman that I knew of who had experienced a loss like that. And it felt very isolating. It felt very guilt-ridden, given the fact that I had no one in my life speaking truth, that it was not my fault that I lost that pregnancy. Instead, I had societal pressure saying it's mom's fault. It's always her fault because she lost this baby. It's because of her. And I decided that I didn't want any other young woman or husband, young man, to ever be in that situation where they were told that it was their fault and that they had no one that they could look to for comfort or understanding, which is where the Cassie series came from. The main character, Jean, a lot of her story through the trial and the trauma and the grief in the mourning was written as I was working through my losses and through mourning deaths in my family, which is why those are such heavy themes, because, again, I went through it alone. A lot of people go through those things alone. And it's my hope that a reader can pick up that book and find a character who gets it. In the midst of their struggles, they find a character who is also struggling, who is having a hard time with everything, going through depression, dealing with anxiety, and know that there is someone who gets it. And that's really the big goal for all of my works, is there's someone who gets it. Someone knows what it's like.
Right. I think that's such an important theme to actually discuss and talk about because, when it does happen, sometimes it's not a topic that we as women really talk about because it can be very dark and painful. I myself had 3 miscarriages. So I know, I know what that experience is like. So I definitely have compassion for you in that. And I think that story would definitely reach out to a lot of women who might have the same experience. So, but how is it couched within the greater story? Is it sort of a theme of is it a redemption arc, or is it sort of a descent into darkness, or like which theme is it, so to speak?
Yeah. So it is a very slow redemption arc as Jean, the character, is learning her self-worth, as well as who she is in society. While all of these heavy topics are being discussed, there are also glimmers of hope. There are Christian characters in there walking alongside of her saying, this isn't the end of your story. There is a greater purpose behind who you are than you just assuming that you're here as a plaything. And
Right.
that's another fun thing about this book is that it is a play on polytheism, so pantheons, like the Greeks and the Romans believed, as well as monotheism, which Christians believe in with one God. Jean follows a polytheistic religion that is entirely karma and work based. So for this character, it's a lot of the same thing that people hear today. You have to do things to become worthy. You have to
Mhm.
do good things to be a good person. If you do bad things, you're a bad person. Meanwhile, the other characters, the Christian characters, bring the redemption of God's grace in. You do not have to do good things to be a good person. We recognize that people are broken. All of us are broken. God's grace is the only thing that can redeem you. And it's that story of trial too, trying to reconcile that, because that's a hard truth to hear. We want to be good people. We want to do good things. We want to say, but I did it. And for myself and the characters in this book, that's not the case. We have to juggle that knowledge of, okay, if you do all of these works, is that really defining who you are? Or is there something greater behind it who is driving those good works, who is glorified through them? So that's another part of it with that redemption. So while the story does delve into the darker topics, and there's a lot of sadness in those books, there's also that glimmer of hope by characters coming alongside her saying, look, this is not the end of the story. It is super dark right now, but there is light. You just need to recognize that the light is there for you to reach out to. You can go to the light. It's your choice.
Right, right. I think that's extremely important because I think our society nowadays tends to glorify darkness,
Yeah.
um, and sort of put it on this strange and weird, bizarre
Yeah.
pedestal,
Yep.
which I don't understand, but that's sort of where our society is at today.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's important to have these themes of,
Yeah.
this is what darkness actually is. It's not this glorified pirate. It's not this
Mm-hmm.
glorified, dark angel. No, this darkness is actually not a good thing. And this is what light actually looks like. So I think those type of things are extremely important.
Yep. And that's why I write in them, because a lot of people, when I speak to them about my books and they hear, I write about darkness, it's an automatic, oh my gosh, I can't read this, I'm Christian. But I like to challenge that, darkness is the absence of light. And if we're
Right,
not willing to expose where that darkness is, we're not willing to bring the light in.
right.
Light is always strongest if you have darkness you can shine it against. And that's what I
Right.
do with my books.
Right, right. And I think another thing that people don't realize is that darkness and light is not always religious in nature, right? For
Exactly.
for those of us who are religious, we
Mm-hmm.
think of it in those ways, but darkness and light is not always religious in nature. I mean,
Yeah.
morality and principles are
Mm-hmm.
definitely, in people who are not religious, right?
Exactly.
And so, knowing that there is darkness, whether you are religious or not, and that it's not a good thing, whether you're religious or not, is
Yeah.
something that I think is becoming something that is downplayed and not really sort of understood as much as it used to be. So I think those
I think
topics
so, yeah.
again are very necessary.
I think you're exactly right. And it's a hard one because people automatically get defensed one way or another because
Right,
they don't like having those challenged mindsets. Because as you said,
right,
society is starting to exemplify darkness, and it doesn't matter what you believe in. In my mind, darkness is darkness. Um, and darkness is rather frightening, regardless of what you believe. That darkness is rather frightening. So we need to hold on to something that is not dark.
right. And I think also people make this mistake of thinking that darkness means you wear goth clothes and black leather jeans. That's not what it is.
It's
Like,
not,
oh, that's
no.
so dark. No, no, that's style. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah,
You have it wrong.
yeah. Well, quite honestly, I mean, I've done a couple of other things with you where I was wearing my corsetry and other things where I've got darker clothes, but I'd like to argue again, it's not dark. That's just style, and it's
It's just style.
monotone. It's monotone.
Right, right. So I think on both sides there's sort of this over exaggeration of what darkness
Yes.
actually is, and an under exaggeration of what darkness is. And I think that leads to a misunderstanding overall. So,
It does. It does. And it's that scary limbo place where people aren't willing to cross the line and talk about it. That becomes the
right,
danger, I think, because then
right.
you're either glorifying it or underestimating it. And both of those are dangerous.
Exactly. Yeah. So this particular book that with this particular redemption arc, is it a part of a series? I didn't catch that part. Or
Oh, no, you're good. So the first book is releasing October 21st. It's called Phantom in the Dark, on the themes of darkness.
all right.
Um, and then it is actually getting followed by 3 more books that will be releasing in the next couple of years. And it's a rather sudden release for the second book, which will be in December, actually,
Okay.
Souls in the Ice. So it will be a 4-book series. I'm currently working on the 3rd book right now. And that has been a whirlwind as we are following a year per book.
Wow.
It's ambitious.
Yeah, that is ambitious, but very good. I mean, if you're able to write at that pace, I
Yep.
mean, some authors can do it. I don't know if you saw the podcast from last week, but K.A. Masterson, um,
Yes.
that woman is prolific.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
She
It's
was like, I
amazing.
think I can do another 4 in a year. I'm like, 4?
Yep. Yeah. Once the writing bug gets going, it really does move quickly. I mean, in April, I'll be releasing another one, and then September next year. So I tend to do about 2 a year, 3 if I'm really writing fast, but that hasn't happened yet. I've got my 2 littles, as I've shared before, and that doesn't
Right.
help.
Right, always. So here's a question. So when you're looking at the word count for a book, what type of word count do you aim for? Because one difficulty that I experienced was I would say, okay, um, basically I'm going to write a book, and then it turned out to be 120,000 words. And I'm like, okay, so I guess I have to split this in half and
Yep.
make it 2 now.
Yep. Yeah, so the word count, I like to sit comfortably. I like to sit over 90,000 words, less than 120,000. Because once you hit 120,000, you start hitting
It's
epics, and I am not willing
right.
to hit an epic right now. And it's quite funny you ask that, actually. Phantom in the Dark and Souls in the Ice and everything else in that Cassie series that I mentioned, it was supposed to be 1 book. It was
Oh,
supposed to
wow.
be 1 book, and I wrote it, and I was sitting at 150,000 words. It's like, this is not a book. We are not doing
Oh,
this. So I cut it in half, and then I wrote Phantom, and it sat beautifully at 94,000 words. I'm like, yes, this is perfect. I then wrote Souls, and it sat over 120 words again. It's like, or 120,000.
man.
It's like, I have to do another book. And that's kind of how mine works. So my sweet spot is between 90,000 and 105,000 is where I like to sit. I do write some novellas as well. So it really
Okay.
depends on how long that story is going to last. Gracefully Broken, which I have with me today, and Turning Point, and then A Mother's Prayer, which follows my story of trying to have our children within this fantasy world with the loss and the trials through that. All 3 of those are novellas. So they are less than 50,000 words. I think I've got 43,000, 45,000, 47,000. So those are all my novellas.
Okay. I mean, in this digital age, if it becomes a Kindle book, that's kind of perfect, actually.
It really is.
Yeah.
It
But
really
in
is.
terms of you writing 150,000 words, you were like writing The Lord of the Rings. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Yeah, that was one of the things I did with my market research when I started writing several years ago. It was, okay, how long are typical fantasy books? Oh, okay, Lord of the Rings is way over there. We're not going that far.
Right, right. So I see now why you're saying that one of them is going to be published almost immediately after the other. It's because you had basically had both of them written at the same time. That makes a lot of sense.
I
So are
did.
you
Yeah.
so are you don't want to give one time to sort of percolate before you cannibalize?
So the idea there is that we'll drop it. We'll drop Phantom in the Dark, that first book. And then once Christmas hits, voracious readers are going to finish that book quickly.
That's true.
And people don't like waiting for that second book. So if I
That's
don't
also true.
release another book within 6 months or so, I'm going to lose reader base. So releasing that first book, giving them more for a second book, and then promising that release about 6 months later means that I have a larger reader base who is then willing to continue to stay, rather than one, oh, here, we're going to wait another 6 months. Oh, we're waiting another year and a half. And it gives
Yeah.
me a little bit of buffer room to write the third and fourth book in that series between them.
Right. Now that you've said that readers don't like to wait, I remember that I get mad at my favorite authors. Like, why is this taking a year? Haven't you
Yeah.
written it already? Hurry up.
Exactly. And that is something that I don't want to deal with, because I know for myself, the longer I have to wait for a book, the faster I forget the book I read. And I don't
Right.
want people to be like, oh, I loved this book. And then 3 years later, oh, cool, I guess I have another book, you know?
Right. Especially if you have a series in mind, because that actually happened with one of my favorite authors. Her name was Michelle Segar West. And she
Yeah.
wrote this entire series with this woman as the protagonist named, I think it's Caitlin, or yeah, Caitlin.
Yeah.
And the series has like, I think 12 or more books. And every time she lets another one out, I'm like, well, I guess I have to read the whole series again
Exactly.
because I can't
Exactly.
remember anything that happened.
Yeah. And that's the one thing I don't want to do. I was such a voracious reader growing up. It was so hard waiting for that next book, because then you'd forget about it or find another book you liked. And I
Right.
didn't want to do that to anyone who enjoyed the story I was telling. I wanted them to be able to have it almost instant gratification, as dangerous as that can be in some cases. It was one where it's like a little bit of instant gratification for waiting for this story. I can understand.
Well, that's awesome. At least you won't be getting hate mail like me, because my books have not.
Oh
I had
no.
one reader email me like, "Look, I'm having surgery. I might die before your book comes out." I'm like,
Oh my gosh.
"I'm so sorry. I can't help that. I'm sorry."
I'll pray hard. I'll pray hard that you
I
don't die so you can read it, but
Good vibes
I
your way.
understand. Oh my
I don't
gosh.
know.
No.
Like, yeah, so thank goodness you don't get that.
Oh, no kidding. I'd cry. I would feel so bad.
I felt bad, but I mean, hey, life happens, right?
Yep. Life
It
happens.
happens.
Exactly.
So why don't you give us the reading of the book and tell us a little about what you're going to read from today?
Yeah, so I'll be reading out of Gracefully Broken, which has a lovely collector's edition copy that I made myself out of leather. Just have to show that off because it's cool that I was able to figure that out.
It's
It took a while.
beautiful.
Thank you. I
Leather.
appreciate it.
Wow.
It was a lot of work. But this section of the book, Gracefully Broken, was written in a strange way in that you can start at the beginning of the book and read to the middle and have a complete story with a cliffhanger ending. You can start in the middle of the book and read to the end and get your cliffhanger ending, or you can read the whole thing and get a cliffhanger ending. So there's 3 different ways you can read this book. You can start and find a nice quiet spot where she rides off to the sunset. You can find that end of the book where you don't know what's going to happen to that main character, or you can read the whole story and figure it out. So this particular section, as I had mentioned, my books take place in a society that has a polytheistic religion and a monotheistic religion. In a particular nation this book takes place in, from the second half of the book on, Christianity is not tolerated. It is entirely people who follow the Solari religion. If you do not follow the Solari religion in that pantheon, you are a heretic and it is executionable. It's very much religious intolerance. So in this particular scene, Marin, the main character, has been told that she needs to go to this city that is the capital of this nation. And she is trying to get in by forging her documents, making a beautiful cover story so that they cannot suspect her of being Christian, so that she can get in safely and continue to serve in secret. So this entire section, it's her entering the city and trying to deal with that amid the guards, the chaos, and the confusion. In the booth sat a bored-looking guard. He was wearing Xanther colors, red with gold embellishment, and was currently playing with a piece of amber on a chain. The pilgrim before Marin provided her paperwork, answered a couple of questions, and then received a stamp on the topmost document. As the other woman walked away, the guard gestured for Marin. She stepped forward, holding her documents ever tighter, and then placed them on the counter. The guard scanned the first page and then looked at Marin with one eyebrow raised. Do you have a job here already? Yes, sir. I was hired by a Mr. and Mrs. Jodius Rampart. She is a midwife in Xanther, and I was going to work for her as I am trained in midwifery as well. Marin shifted as the guard's eyes narrowed. I see. Where were you planning on staying? Mr. and Mrs. Rampart had an empty space in their attic. Part of my employment was room and board, Marin said. Do you have proof of this? Marin nodded. It's the third page in my documents, sir. I saved the letters we sent back and forth. Mrs. Rampart wrote to Godric's Rest asking if we had any midwives available for hire, as there was an influx of pregnancies in Xanther. We all wrote to her, and she selected me as her apprentice. The guard skimmed the letter Marin was talking about before he set the documents down. Miss, he glanced at her papers. Lot, you are aware that Mr. and Mrs. Jodius Rampart were executed yesterday for practicing heresy and witchcraft, are you not? Marin's face ran cold, and she slowly shook her head. No, sir, I wasn't aware of that. He frowned. I see. Well, Miss Lot, as there seems to be no reason to be here. Oi, Thaddeus, get a load at this. Both Marin and the guard looked towards the shouting, where another guard had a young man by the scruff. He's selling ambers, glass ambers. No, sirs, you misunderstand. These are not meant for worship, simply decoration. Scoundrels. Let me finish this. The guard before Marin fumbled for a stamp, knocking both over. He grabbed one blindly and then stamped Marin's top document. Now, get out of here. Everyone clear out. This gate check is now closed. He all but tossed her papers to her, hurrying from his booth. Marin was left to stare at her documents. Approved. Thank Hamelech, she breathed, catching sight of the large rejected stamp that remained abandoned on the table. With that, she pulled her cloak's hood up and hurried through the gate. So this is the introduction to Marin managing to get into that city in which the rest of the book takes place in. And it's a good portion of that grace that God gives in orchestrating everything, and that stamp being knocked over that would have declined and rejected her application to walk in.
Okay. Wow. So is that collector's edition with the leather back available for sale for everybody, or is that like the single book on the planet?
It's the single book on the planet. I made it myself. I am hoping to eventually offer them for sale. I'm currently trying to get a hardcover done first. But this is my copy of my book, and it was one where we decided that it needed to have a nice cover done for it so that it stays safe and go with the kids when they get older.
Okay, well, that is amazing. So, are you going to showcase it a little bit more, like show it off at the Oh, you won't be able to go to the CreatorCore.
Not this week, no, or not this month. In November, I'd like to. I actually need to post pictures of this on my socials.
Yeah.
I haven't done that since trying to get this cover done. I forgot completely that Facebook existed for about 2.5 weeks. So
I understand the feeling.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I just want to thank you so much for returning and sort of refreshing our audience and letting them see your beautiful book that you made, and also will hopefully, be able to collaborate in the future.
Yes, I would love to do that, Kay. Thank you so much for having me again. I really enjoy these.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Okay, so next we are going to be having author Michael Copeland, and I'll be adding him to the stage. Hello, how are you doing?
All right. Good evening, everybody. How are you?
We're doing good. So I just want to say thank you again for coming back.
Yes, most definitely. Glad to be here.
And also, we had discussed that you might read a little bit of an excerpt from some of your book.
Yes. Sorry about that. I know technology is not always on our side, so I'm getting a little bit delayed on my end. but I did catch the excerpt of my book. So my book is called The Journey of One Determined Educator. It's actually a series. It's a two-part series. So the excerpt that I will read is from my first book. So the story pretty much, just to give you a little quick thing beforehand, pretty much is an educator who does not give up despite turbulence, despite situations, issues, learning students. He starts all the way from himself. So it's my testimonial. But I do I do fictionalize the book as far as the names. So my name in the book is James Turner. So for confidentiality, I kept everybody's names separate, especially when it comes to talking about student testimonials. But pretty much the book is meant to inspire educators. It's meant to inspire mentors. It's meant to inspire anybody who wants to make a change. So it's about one educator who chose not to give up, starting with his own testimony. So I'm getting ready to read a little bit of chapter 1. It's just how the protagonist, how his story stands out. So before he goes into his student testimonials, before he gets into education and what led him there, he talks about his own testimonial. So allow me to read from chapter 1.
Okay.
I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. I was the youngest of 3 children. We came from a good household, parents who were actively involved in our lives and had a strong belief in education. My siblings were always very successful in school and everything they did. I, however, was not. It seemed like everything was a struggle for me: school, sports, friendships, etc. I always had mediocre grades throughout high school. I graduated by the skin of my teeth with a 2.0 GPA. I slacked off, got high, and got in trouble with the wrong crowd. The summer I graduated high school, I was so depressed because I did not get accepted into any out-of-state schools due to my grades. My ex-girlfriend got pregnant, decided to abort the baby. Hanging with the wrong crowd got me arrested for illegal activity multiple times. That summer, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. So I decided I had no purpose and to end my life. One day, I came home from a long day, and we lived in a big apartment building. That was my first real suicide attempt. When I hit the ground, it made a loud thud, which woke up several neighbors. The neighbors rushed out to see what had happened in panic. Next thing you know, I see the ambulance and police running to the backyard of the apartment, and I was immediately taken to the hospital. When I arrived, of devastation on my mother's face, my sister's face, and my father's face is something that I will never forget as long as I live. I had hurt them. I had scared them. I had made everyone concerned beyond belief. Before my suicide attempt, I didn't even consider the impact that it would have on my family. After I was checked out of the hospital, they immediately sent me to the psychiatric ward for suicidal patients so I could receive help. I spent 7 days in the psychiatric ward with individuals from the ward, and I was placed on antidepressants. When I returned home, I knew something had to change. I had to create a new lifestyle for myself. This is when I chose to, and it truly made a difference for my future. This was when I realized I had a purpose for my future and God had a plan. I went to community college in Cleveland for a year. Even though I did not get into any out-of-state schools, I did get into all in-state schools. The next year, I chose to attend an HBCU in my home state called Central State University. And then the rest of the book goes into how the protagonist has a journey into college, how in college he not only starts being successful and locks in, but also how he finds his purpose and his passion, which is teaching and education. So God had a whole plan for him once he got saved. He would meet mentors, other educators. They would start this camp that would help urban youth for the next 4 years. And those youths have testimonies and stories that will rock your world. And also, he dives into his early career after he graduates from college, and we start talking about teaching and his early career in Nashville, and what he had he had to do with as far as building community and advocacy, and also more student testimonials, and also talking about tips and strategies that teachers can use as if they're fresh going in. So kind of his beginning testimonial and his beginning career years for the first book. The second book, which I don't know how much time we have, but the second book is The Journey of One Determined Educator Part 2. And that kind of dives more into his mid-level career after he gets married and when he moves to Cleveland, and the 5 years he spends up here on the Broadway 55th area, which is 100% in poverty. So dealing with all the battles that educators have to face in the urban education era, and all the hurdles we have to face, and all the hurdles that families have to face, and how educators can still be successful, and how they can still and how we're needed, and how we can still make a difference even in the hardest of areas. And I also have a third book called Less Violence, More Mentoring. And that is a joint book where I work with 15 other co-authors, and we each talk about our experiences mentoring. We each talk about how mentoring's made a difference in our life, and how ways the community can also mentor and teach others. So all my books are based off teaching, education, mentoring.
It seems like. Can you hear me?
Are we getting some audio?
I think
Yeah, I can hear you. You're good. Yeah.
There might have been a bit of a delay. So if you wanted to read a little bit of the second book, like maybe a paragraph from the second book, and then sort of tell how the first
Sure.
leads into the second book, so that people get a sense of the growth.
Okay. All right. So the last book, it ends with my beginning years in my early career. So the last chapter in my book is called in the first book is called The Ever Evolving Journey. So I pretty much just talk about the chronicles and the beacon of hope, the progress and setbacks and breakthroughs and challenges, and how it takes unwavering commitment. And so just pretty much wrapping up the end of my career in Nashville. And so the last segment is every next level of your life will demand a different you. So you go from this kid who was a suicide survivor to now he's a passionate educator, helping youth and helping parents in every capacity in some of the roughest neighborhoods. So once he gets married and leaves Nashville, once he grows his career in Nashville, then the second book, he then meets his wife in Nashville. They get married and they move to Cleveland. And so I'll just read a little bit from the first chapter here. So the first chapter in the second book is called Moving Back Up North. So that's the first chapter. And so it says after years of building a career in education in Nashville, my wife and I made a monumental decision to move back up north to Cleveland. Reflecting on my time in Nashville, I thought about the students whose lives I had touched and the teachers who had influenced me. I had grown immensely during those early years, and now I was stepping into a new phase of my career in life. This wasn't easy. We had recently married and started our life together, but we knew that being close to family would provide the support system that we need for our future. Both of us applied for jobs in Cleveland, and I secured a position at Hillford Elementary School, moving from an area of where 90% of families face poverty to one where 100% did was daunting. So in my first book, I started in an area that was 9% in poverty. Now I'm moving into an area that's 100% in poverty. So we went up 10% in the needs of and the families and the communities that we're getting ready to serve in the second book. So I had been forewarned during my interview about limited resources in Cleveland compared to Nashville, and I braced myself for the challenges ahead. The transition was monumental. Returning to my hometown as an adult professional felt unfamiliar despite its familiarity. The Cleveland of my childhood was a patchwork of memories, some joyful, others painful. As an educator, I now saw the city through a different lens, one that focused on systemic inequities and the urgent need for meaningful intervention in the lives of its most vulnerable residents. The weight of this responsibility was both motivating and overwhelming. As soon as I arrived, I was thrown into the deep end, managing a last-minute summer camp initiative with only weeks to plan. We scrambled to organize activities for 4 grade levels of students. The experience was chaotic but rewarding, and the camaraderie of the summer staff was the silver lining. It was also an opportunity to build relationships with the teachers I had to soon to be working with. So that kind of is a segue into the first chapter and into his book. So the second, dealing with the hurdles of an area that's 100% in poverty, dealing with administrative hurdles. I work for a principal that is an experience, and so pretty much the experience is the wraparound service coordinator and his team kind of have to step up and take control of the school due to lack of leadership, due to pretty much a lot of times with the hurdles and battles that teachers have to face. So pretty much this is a memoir for urban educators and all the hurdles and battles that we have to face. So fights that we have to break up. You know, we talk about how we started a prayer community because it got so bad. So we get real, but we also provide situation, each testimony. So everything in every chapter brings the truth, but also it brings a lesson. And that's what it was. And then and also leads to you know, how I had to how funding was cut and how I got laid off my position and how we had to revamp and find a new position and how I moved out to overcome that. So this book kind of tackles a few different levels of how I got to where I am now. And so that's why it was a 2-part series because it just couldn't be one book. When I finished the first book, I knew I wasn't done, but something just told me to stop. I usually do about 32. I heard you guys talking about word count in the last author interview. So I do about roughly 26,000 to 60,000 words in my books. So on the lower end, 26,000. Like the first book is roughly 26,000 words. The anthology, which is 212 pages, is the 60,000 book, obviously. But me personally, I'm not a long novel book reader. I like to make easy reads. I want my readers to actually, you know, read my book. There's nothing wrong with novels, of course, and I respect novels, but I wanted my book personally to be an easy read. I didn't want my book to be intimidating. I want my book to be a testimonial. I want my book to be just accessible to anybody. My book's for ages 12 and up. So it's also for youth, maybe youth who are going through the educational system, college students. So I want it to be something feasible for all readers.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense, especially if they're of the younger generation and you're utilizing that basically that creative work to sort of inspire people who might be from marginalized areas, from, you know, marginalized communities. You don't really want to give them a very long book. You want to give them something almost bite-sized that they can read and be inspired by it. So that makes a lot of sense. So. So, you know,
Yes, ma'am.
just in terms of the books that you have written, is this something you're going to talk more about during the Creator Carnival? And also, next week, I would like to invite on a friend of yours that you actually, um, sort of introduced to Kay's Collab Corner. So if you want to be sort of his introduction today and talk about him, because we're hopefully bringing him on next week.
Oh, you talk. Oh, yes, Pate. Yes,
Yes.
yes. So most definitely. I definitely. I'm looking forward to the Creative Carnival for one. Yes, I will definitely dive more into my books and my process at Creative Carnival. I recommended a good friend and brother of mine to CreatorCore. It was an honor to recommend Mr. Pate Muse. He and I definitely share one thing in common, which connected us. We both were on a huge weight loss journey, our own individual journeys. And so this brother inspired me because he lost 300 pounds. He went from like
Wow.
500 to 200 in the course of a couple of years. And so he wrote a whole book on a weight loss challenge. And so I'm not going to spoil anymore. I actually just started reading his book and got really, so I'm in the process of reading it right now. But definitely got inspired by him because him and I were International Impact Book Award winners. I was 2024. He was this year. So I actually got invited to speak at a panel at the conference that he was attending last July. So it was an honor to connect with him in person and also to be finalist for Author of the Year 2025, which will be seeing each other again in person in October, along with the rest of the finalists. So definitely excited to have him on.
It seemed you're cutting in and out, but for the most part, I'm really excited for author Pate to come on next week, and it's going to be very interesting hearing about his journey. I want to thank you so much for coming back and reading some of your work for us, and I'm really excited for you to attend the Creators Carnival. We have a very large panel that's going to be attending this time, and a bunch of new authors that did not attend the last one will definitely be attending this one. So this is going to be very exciting. So I want to thank you again for joining us here at Books Galore and Creator Core. And hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Yes, for sure. Most definitely. I'm looking forward to it. And definitely can't wait to dive into more. I also have two more books that I'm underway as well. I really loved how the last author had said she writes 2 books a year. I'm like, okay, so I'm not crazy. I'm on that spree too, where I'm like, I wrote 2 books this year, and I'm actually in the process of writing 2 more, which will come out. One will come out hopefully December. The other one next June. So I have 2 more books that are underway. So my goal is at least 2 books a year too. Maybe 3 if I'm crazy. So it'll be 3 if it makes December, but we'll see. But I'm glad to hear that other authors are like going hardcore. So yeah, that's my goal.
Oh yeah. All right. I'm super excited for that. Hopefully we'll be able to see some of those books that you write in the future. And I want to thank you for joining us here. And we will see you next time at the Creator Carnival.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for having me.
All right. Bye-bye. All right, so that pretty much ends today's sort of episode with two authors, author Ellie Larum and author Dr. Michael Copeland. Next week we will be having author Pate, who will be talking about his weight loss journey. And we just want to thank anybody who has been watching and participating, especially in the comments. You see a lot of comments here, so thank you for that. And we hope that you will join us next time here at Books Galore and CreatorCore. And thank you again.